Today we're going to be talking about ArcGIS Urban and going through some of the more advanced workflows and topics. And I'm joined here today, I'm Brooks Patrick. I lead the business development team for the cross-sector smart cities at Esri. Also here is Lisa Stelly from our Zurich R&D Center, junior software engineer. And then we have Eric Whitner, product manager for ArcGIS Urban, as well as some other geo-enabled products. Brian Sims, who leads the Urban Labs team within our professional services. So we're both going to talk a little bit about advanced workflows with City Engine, as well as some more extended work that we've been doing with some customers, also using some of the 3D JavaScript API. But before we get into those, what I thought I'd do is just get everyone on the same page. I guess really quickly, just a housekeeping note. There's a manila envelope that can go around. And if you would like all the links that we're about to present, then we'll just follow up with an email with all the links if you drop your business card in there. So don't worry, we don't even know how to get into our marketing system. I think that's what the scanners are for. But if you do want the links, then that's just an easy way to get them to you. Just to kick it off, though, I thought we'd actually show this slide. Our cities are facing massive challenges, and what we've noticed is that this picture is not unique to Melbourne. Basically, cities everywhere are facing development stresses. Basically, this influx of people moving to the city, as well as good economies, are really fostering a lot of development in our urban environments. And what we see are some key stakeholders who need this tool that we're creating called ArcGIS Urban to really have a common view on this set of challenges and address them. When it comes to understanding what's being proposed by real estate developers, for example, so that governments can update zoning, regulatory codes to better allow and foster for more beneficial urban form for downtowns. And then so citizens and AEC folks who are in the communities can actually see and work with some of the same data that the government and real estate developers are also working in to really foster this common view over the city of what's possible, what's being built, and where. So ArcGIS Urban has been an initiative for about the past year and a half, 2 years, to really take a lot of these planning workflows and build them into an extended tool, leveraging the web browser. It's built on our JavaScript API, which means that it leverages a lot of the core technology that all of you are probably familiar with in ArcGIS Online. However, what we've done is base a lot of tools on that, looking at development review, as well as some planning tools to work with the regulatory code itself. So this is to make it more accessible. We see this as a tool really geared towards the practitioner, not necessarily the GIS analyst at the city. So we do want to build a geo-enabled tool, as we call it, where it's supported by GIS, but you don't necessarily have to be familiar with what a feature service is. But in this particular session, we will go into what a feature service is and talk about all that. There are some key capabilities that Urban provides. First and foremost is the ability to visualize projects citywide and basically combine the point location of a new project coming, for example, from a permitting system with an actual 3D model representation of that project. The second is really the capability to improve urban planning and the productivity around updating zoning codes. Typically, a specific plan takes 1 to 2 years to complete, and we want to reduce the amount of time it takes to actually go in and create different scenario proposals and really improve the understanding of what is that change going to mean in terms of the feasibility for different developments. So the third is to increase transparency and understanding around not only the zoning and regulatory codes, but also these new projects coming in. We see a lot of them are coming in as Revit models now, as BIM is now really being widely adopted in the construction engineering space. So we want to leverage this high fidelity data in the actual conceptual review of these projects so that we can then recommend different changes early on in the process, as early as possible. To really reduce the financial risk that a lot of these companies face when going through with a lot of these development proposals. And then fourth and foremost is better engagement. We see this as not only an internal tool that can be used to mock up different scenarios, but also as an engagement platform. So we've created Urban, and we'll get into the details of that, to have a public view on these projects and plans and indicators that might be something that you could pull up at a council meeting, for example, and use to actually have that discussion around whether or not we should go forward, or open it up for crowdsourcing. So we do have some commenting capabilities as well. What I'll do now is just give a quick demo, just to make sure everyone has seen it before we really go into the advanced topics. This will be a quick version. Yesterday we went into a little bit more detail, but I assume that most of you saw the plenary. So I'm going to actually pull up Pasadena. Pasadena is going through about 8 different specific plans. These stretch from their downtown all the way out to what we call the urban fringe, where you have a lot of the suburbs starting and more big box retail, and they're all pretty much unique in their form in Pasadena. But the one that we focused on in the plenary was South Fair Oaks. In South Fair Oaks, this is an old industrial corridor just south of the downtown. And what Urban provides is this overview, as I was mentioning, more of a shared view, something that could be consumable by those who don't necessarily have any planning background. So you have a lot of information that you can embed on these cards, as well as scenarios that can be made public so that anyone can go see them. However, when we go in and actually want to edit a plan, we can actually do that directly in Urban, directly in the browser. So this is the Chrome browser. I mean, I bet it works on Safari, Firefox, and all the major browsers. Not Internet Explorer, I was told. So you'll have to test out Edge. So when you go into the plan and you start your edit session, basically you have a copy of the existing zoning. So when you stand up Urban, it is a process of loading zoning into the Urban data model. Sometimes zoning codes can be quite complex, but our data model looks at things like setbacks and FAR so that you can actually just scan through the legal text. Maybe it's in Municode or in an old PDF binder that you might have. The ability to load the existing zoning code is really the starting point, so that the practitioners, the planners, or maybe even the AEC consultants don't have to ask you for the data. Basically, they create a copy based on that plan extent. It comes with parcels, it comes with any overlays that might exist in that plan area, and all of the zones themselves. And the zones can be seen here in this side panel, almost like a palette. You can see some example proposed zones here as well. You can't actually edit the existing zoning or the existing parcels. These are read-only. However, what you're able to do is start to create different scenarios based on those zones. So something that was done for South Fair Oaks was this little land use concept here, looking at increasing FARs, floor area ratios, or FSIs, for those in European settings. The floor space index, or FAR, is usually 1.9, probably around 2 for this area, but they wanted to see what would happen if we look at making that a 3, for example. So we can do that by using these tools here in the top left to basically divide up, and if I turn off the buildings and some of the parcels, you can see the zoning districts themselves can be split, merged. You can draw brand new districts, you can delete districts and redraw them, but each one of these reflects the zoning parameters over here in the types menu. So if I open up one of these, you can see we have fields that look at coverage, floor area ratios, maximum heights, maximum number of floors, and then it goes into looking at setbacks, setbacks from the street side or the interior side, and then we look at front, side, rear as the typical edges of parcels. We can also apply allowed space uses. So many times you have a general plan land use code that says you can only have residential. So then you can only allow residential space uses, I say, rather than land use, because really we go into what kind of residential space is allowed, affordable housing versus single family housing versus typical multifamily. So we can actually assign those to be allowed or not. Overlays are a way to actually override those defaults set by the zone, and it allows you to store things like height on a separate layer, which many times is not controlled by that zoning district. It might be reflective of maybe an airport nearby, for example. And with that, we're able to take and represent zoning on the parcel. So if we select a parcel here, I'll just go ahead and turn on the envelopes. Envelopes are generated from the parcel by really feeding all those parameters of the zone through. So you're looking at the different setbacks and max heights to actually see what's allowable in the overall buildable envelope on that lot. Within that, we're able to then propose different building types. Building types are a way of allocating new structures, a combination of space uses, as you can see here with office in blue and retail in red and residential in yellow. We're basically looking at different parcels that are likely to redevelop under these new zoning conditions and what that might actually foster in terms of an urban form, so that we can actually go in and, based on what we know might redevelop, we can go and tweak the zoning. For example, if we select that particular zone here, we can go into the edit mode here on that proposed zone. And for example, we can, at 55-foot start height, have the front street setback go 25 feet instead of 5 feet. That will actually be a change to the zone, so it's going to affect all the parcels that reside within that zone, in this case making the top 2 floors setback from the street. So it's an effective way to test different policies. If you're increasing FAR, if you're changing different setback considerations for public right-of-way, for example, it's a great way to test that. We can also open up a dashboard and see a breakdown of the capacity indicators for population, household units, and jobs. This is a way to actually judge your scenario and whether or not it's hitting certain targets. Those targets might be sort of the cap, so the most you can have based on public services, or maybe that's just the target that you want to hit to accommodate certain growth that you know is coming to the city. So in this case, you can look at different scenarios for different years of build out and see maybe some lots will develop in year 5, some lots will develop by year 10. So you can actually run those scenarios directly here and test out the outcomes over here on the charts. The charts also give you a breakdown of the land use within the buildings here, as well as the zoning, both existing zoning and then the proposed zoning by square foot. So you get a breakdown of the different FAR parameters that have been proposed. So really that's the plan side of ArcGIS Urban. We do have also capabilities to showcase projects citywide. As I mentioned, in the case of Pasadena, they've been using 3D models for quite a while in the conceptual development of these projects, just to review them early on. Typically, we see them come in as KMZ as the typical format for submissions. And we can start to apply things like sketchy edges. We can open it up for commenting, for example, and my colleague doesn't like the facade here. And you kind of get a sense for the other capabilities, but for this session, we're actually going to be really focusing in on that plan aspect of urban and also the advanced workflows around that, both taking it down to City Engine, but also the capabilities around suitability selection of parcels, so that when you do have this building type allocation, you do have some logic behind that, and so you can actually defend it and justify those changes and see what it might foster down the road. So when it comes to City Engine integration, we took that Raymond Avenue, and you might have seen it in the plenary, we took it down to City Engine. That allows us to more, I guess, go into more detail on the facade modeling, looking at different articulation in the facade. It also allows us to render it by taking it out to some free video game technology like Unreal Engine. So as long as you don't build a game, it should be freely available to you to use. We do have templates like you see here that allow you to render out more the experiential nature of that particular street that we were working on just now. And I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, but I thought I'd show this image real quick because it was up on stage. You might not have caught it, but Pasadena's had zoning since 1917. That's the little yellow book. And today it got a little bit more complex. I mean, this is happening. It's not just Pasadena. I'm sure all of you have zoning books that look more like the one on the right there. We're not trying to do everything. We're trying to pull out the parameters within this code that really matter when it comes to describing the form that can be generated from zoning codes. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Eric to take you through some of the features of version 1, and then we'll actually dive into some advanced topics here.
Okay, so version 1 released last week. It's available. It is a premium application built on ArcGIS Online, and it's licensed per named user. It provides insight into development feasibility, so it allows you to understand what change is going to happen around your city based on zoning codes. So those codes are actually pulled into the ArcGIS Urban data model and used to create representations, zoning envelopes and building types, which can drive reporting, and you can do comparison between scenarios. You can share these initially right within your primary users. So you have your licensed users of ArcGIS Urban who are actually authors and people who are creating new plans or new designs. They're actually sharing that shared urban model within their organization so other people can look at the overviews and understand what's being proposed. And then they can choose to share that with a public layer that goes out to the public. And they can actually share their zoning regulations with the public as well. And we can use that as a resource to make decisions. So I want to do kind of a coarse system architecture diagram just so you understand what we're talking about here. ArcGIS Urban is a system of record for your zoning, both the regulation as represented by a table and the geometries associated with it and the things that impact it, like overlays. It also includes your plans, which are representations of change to zoning for specific areas, and it also contains projects. It's actually created and populated through a web-based management system inside ArcGIS Urban through the application itself, but also published from context from ArcGIS Pro. So you might use Pro to publish your 3D buildings or additional indicator metrics. And then, of course, it's administrated as part of ArcGIS Online when you're creating groups and users and want to manage access to that. That system of record is used to create representations of change. So when you create a plan, what you're actually doing is taking a little piece of your code out, bringing it into a plan, and then creating multiple scenarios on top of that. This allows you to do a couple things. One is you can change zoning for specific areas, as Brooks was showing, or you can change whole codes and do kind of a game comparison or many alternative scenarios, but you're not actually changing your system of record directly. So you have this ability to kind of do alternative futures in a separate way, in a separate database. Once you have those plans and projects, you want to do something with them so you can share them back. Of course, you can share them internally with your organization, but you can actually move them across to a public view and then let the public see them and the public give you feedback on that. So it's a way of engaging with people as well. This database, though, you can actually turn the database of your zoning completely public. And then if you imagine other people that you're collaborating with, for instance, architecture, engineering, construction companies, who are the people who are actually proposing projects or doing proposed design, can reach in and touch that database, make their own versions of plans and projects, and then share those out as well. So it becomes a collaboration tool around the whole development pipeline. So that's the rough structure of ArcGIS Urban in terms of a database. What are we providing at version 1 to you? It's really composed of a couple core experiences. One is this overview, which is an interactive 3D environment where you can go in and explore your city and see all the activities that happen, all the events, the plans, and the projects. You can actually visually compare the scenarios within plans and projects so you can have multiple designs and see which ones are best, and they're summarized by indicators so you actually understand what the impacts are. If you don't know where, you can search and filter. So for instance, you can log in, enter your address, and see all the plans and projects that are around your area. Or if you're looking for a specific project, you heard about it on the news, you can enter information about it and actually filter those out. Plans and projects also have different statuses. So projects actually are under different levels of construction. You should say, show me all the projects that are currently going to be approved. Show me all the projects that are currently under construction so you can understand how that change is happening. There are pre-authored indicators inside ArcGIS Urban. Indicators tell you the condition of your city, and you can actually create your own indicators. But we are going to provide some based on the Living Atlas for free, and we're going to continue to expand those, expand both free ones in the Living Atlas, and if you have access to premium content, we plan on working with, for instance, the business analyst team and making premium indicators that if that user has a business analyst license, they'll get access to those as well. It's got operations dashboard integration. When you create an indicator, there's actually a set of charts to tell you something about it on the right side. You author those in operations dashboard and bring them in. And then once you have all that shared out in the overview is where you collect public ideas and public comments on your city. One thing just to say, when an idea is submitted, if you're the owner of Urban, you're the one who approves whether it gets to be seen publicly. So it's not, nobody can just throw up whatever they want. And some cities have requested there is the ability to totally disable that function if you don't want to gather that feedback. Once you actually want to make change, create a plan, we actually, or a project, we actually have these planning tools. And they're wrapped around, the core is this parametric zoning constraints that are based on the zoning regulations. And they create representations of envelopes of what you can build in. Then those envelopes are filled with plausible building forms of specific shapes. And right now it can be the shape of the parcel on or a rectangular shape. And we're expanding the procedural library. We're going to have L-shaped and U-shaped and other types of buildings that can go in there. They're actually organized by building types. And building types have actually different types of spaces that are associated within them. So when you apply a zone, you can pick between all the available buildings that are applicable for that zone. Those zones, those spaces actually have capacity metrics associated with them, which is how we get to those numbers like total population added, total number of jobs added, households. Those can be compared, so you have multiple scenarios side by side. Right? If you want, you're applying these changes on top of your parcels, on top of your zoning boundaries, but you have the ability to edit and change those as you want to, so you can merge parcels together or split them apart. You can actually create this totally greenfield. You could build it in a place where nothing exists yet, invent your own zoning regulations, invent your own parcels and areas just through editing. It also manages the adjacency between those parcels. That's really important in terms of zoning regulation, whether you know you're abutting a street, how big that street is, whether you're abutting an adjacent parcel, and conditioning what can be built in it based on that. And then you can select some parcels based on suitability, and I'll let Brian talk a little bit more about suitability. It also integrates with City Engine as a design tool, so you can bring plans and projects in. You can sync the scenarios to City Engine. You can open up. You can enhance the buildings. So in City Engine, you can actually touch the buildings and edit and modify them. You can apply rules to make them more visually compelling. You can add in streets and streetscapes. You conduct interactive analysis. So City Engine has interactive viewshed tools that measure visibility. It has connectivity analysis for the road networks. You can then publish that back as a scenario in ArcGIS Urban, or you can start sharing it out. You could say author a mobile VR experience with ArcGIS 360 VR, or take it to a game engine through one of the Unreal templates and share it out in a VR experience that way. I'm not going to go into huge detail on the roadmap. I just want to call out a couple of these items that are important for advanced workflows. The one is the APIs and SDKs. So we're building the ability for partners to build and extend on top of ArcGIS Urban. So that's be able to publish their own custom indicators into Urban, be able to conduct analysis on the features and pull those out. And that's something that we are going to be developing in the future. We're also going to be working on the collaboration frameworks and integration with Hub, tighter integration with Hub. So that's the ability to manage teams around projects and then actually spin up Hub pages on top of that actually engage people and get feedback. And then the last one I want to call out is just from the feedback from the users we've been talking to and our distributors is ArcGIS Enterprise Support, is the ability to actually build one of these things and host it on-prem, which is essential. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brooks.
Yeah, so I'll hand it over to Brian, but I guess before that, it's good to point out that as Eric is talking about what's next, a lot of what we're showing here is what it is today and what we're working on for the future. And we do that together with customers that we've been working with over the years. So I'm going to have Brian actually talk you through one of these particular projects coming up to do with development capacity analysis. It's usually a state-mandated rule that cities and counties must analyze for how well they can accommodate growth as populations are forecasted by the state. This is a common practice, and we really hope to extend ArcGIS Urban and the ability to really work through that process together with Urban and some additional capabilities that Brian has here.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brooks. My mic live. You hear me in the back? Yep. All right. Excellent. Thank you. So as Brooks mentioned, I'm in professional services, and in that role, I get to work with a number of customers in the implementation of ArcGIS Urban over the last year. We've been implementing ArcGIS Urban for over 20 cities around the world as we've been developing the product. And in that opportunity, we get to work very closely with people, hear the feedback, drive that back into the development cycle, and in some cases work on some very specific sets of workflows that don't make sense necessarily to drive into the product right away, or be able to think through things in a little more detail and refine our requirements for future development efforts. We've been working closely with the City of Seattle on growth capacity analysis as part of a statewide mandate that they have to do to understand whether or not they can meet the needs of the expected needs for housing and jobs. Those growth targets are set by the state, and they need to be able to show whether or not they can meet those under existing policies, and if they can't, how they might need to change their existing zoning policy to be able to meet those forecasts. So through that effort, we've been developing a series of kind of focused workflows to support that process. In this case here, our example, we're looking at a neighborhood in Honolulu in Hawaii, which is definitely not Seattle, but it's been a great place to kind of test out some of the processes. So here we're taking a look at ArcGIS Urban, and kind of following on a little bit of how the demo that Brooks was showing earlier. And we've got the existing conditions, and we've selected a parcel, and we're going to redevelop that parcel. And here's our collection of different building types as Brooks describes. And we assign that building, and now we've redeveloped it. In this case, we've got a single-use residential multifamily building that's 2 stories. We can get a sense for its size and scale within the context of the existing environment. I've done that for one parcel, and if I've got good local knowledge of specific parcels that might redevelop or an entire block that might need to redevelop, I can go through and do that within the tools that are available. I can do parcel splits and merges as needed and assign different usages. I could assign a single use on multiple properties or go through and strategically assign individual building types across the neighborhood. Additionally, we can go through and use data that have been assigned to my parcels that indicate where we are likely to see change within the community based on a set of criteria that I come up with. And that score is then available to me by selecting a field in my data. This is just information that live on my data. This is just normal GIS exposed in a very user-friendly way. So I now have a set of parcels that are flagged as likely to redevelop based on the criteria, and I could assign a use. So we're now going to step outside of ArcGIS Urban and take a look at a web interface that we've been building that kind of sits around ArcGIS Urban, but on the back end, it's reading and writing the exact same data. So if I create something in Urban, it's available in this other app. If I create something in this app, it's writing back to the same database. Very similar user experience working with the very same data. And this place is giving us kind of a web-based experience for again, for supporting this very specific workflow. So in this case, I have a suitability model that I'm going to run and apply a suitability score on my data. Now, keep in mind, this is not suitability score for, say, citing a retail location. I'm specifically looking to try and identify where I might see change within my community. And when I run that model against my data, we're actually writing values to the attribute table and basically creating a paper trail that says I used these criteria had these weights, and I got to this score. So that the city on a plan by plan, scenario by scenario way has a documentation trail of how they got to that score. And the joke that I say is that when they get sued, because they're likely to get sued, they now can defend their efforts. So let's take a look at that model that I applied. So we've got a nice web experience for basically connecting to the fields that I have in my data, and I can add as many parameters as I want. In this case, I've got things like what year was the building built, is there whether or not there is a building on that lot or not, maybe lot area. That the parameters that I create here are entirely up to me based on the data that I have. So for year built, we connect to that field. We get a breakdown of the ranges of years. I can then create my own breaks. And then for each one of those ranges of years, I can then put a score on it. So in this case, I've said buildings that are older than 1900 are unlikely to develop given their historic status. In the US, older than 1900 is old. For many of you, that's brand new. I don't know. But in our case, that was the threshold that was set for there. And then buildings that were, say, older than 1900 are highly likely to develop just looking at the age of the building. So then I can create these scores and basically set up that one parameter. For this case in Honolulu, they wanted to look at buildings that are only under 20,000 square feet. So anything that was above that, we then want to set a global override and exclude all of those regardless of any other factor. And I can kind of mix and match these different parameters and then create a weight on each one of those parameters and assign that to my data. I can create multiple models and run one model on one neighborhood, run a different model on a different neighborhood. So what do I do with that? So now I have this single score against my data, and in a very similar fashion, I can go through and set thresholds. In this case, I've got some bookends that I can create and select properties that are above my threshold. So now these are properties that, based on my model, I've determined are likely to redevelop. And I'm going to go ahead and flag those as redevelopable. Now, in this case, we've set that based on just those parameters. And for the situation in Honolulu, we wanted to then filter out properties that were developable, but not in a residential neighborhood. So I can additionally add in my zoning boundaries and select all of those parcels that are developable, but in a commercial zone, and then turn off their redevelopment status. So very common kind of multiple ways of selecting and identifying and turning on and off values within my data to kind of hone in on exactly the sets of data that I want to try and redevelop. Now, next, we have this notion of those building types that we talked about, and I can strategically go around and assign individual building types on parcels and make selections of 10s or 20s of parcels at a time and assign building types. We're trying to think through this notion of a place type concept. So neighborhoods are made up of multiple different building types. We might have a mix of some small scale retail mixed in with some residential. We might have a neighborhood type that's more mixed use and mixed use commercial, mixed use residential. And we can mix and match multiple building types together in a weighted fashion and say that I'm going to have 60% of this building type and 40% of that building type, and select hundreds of parcels at a time and then distribute those different building types across hundreds of or thousands of parcels and very rapidly build out my scenario. So in this case, I've created this place type and I've distributed those around the community. So let's take a look at what that place type is composed of. So we see a list. I can mix and match as many building types as I want. Again, I'm pulling data directly from Urban. So that list of building types that I create in Urban is now made available to me here. If I go back to Urban and add 3 more building types, I can come back over here, refresh, and pull them in, make them available. And I can mix and match these different building types and assign them to different collections of neighborhoods. So now let's go back to ArcGIS Urban and see the results of what we were working on. So now we've got that same neighborhood that we started off with, and now we've got this distribution of very different building types around the community. It's predominantly residential, but we've got a mixture of some hotels, we've got a little bit of mixture of office, as well as some mixed residential. And so beyond just the visualizations that we've looked at before, we can drop down to the street, get a sense for the size, bulk, and scale of that neighborhood. Are we Manhattan, or are we, three-story walk-ups like we had before? So we get that visual, but then off of each one of those buildings, we now get our dashboard that shows us our capacity metrics. And we can get to see that across multiple scenarios. So I have both my population, housing, and jobs for the existing conditions. We get it for the new conditions, the community that we will see in the future. And then we, in this case, if we had target measurements, in the case of Seattle, that's that stuff that's coming down from the state where they have to defend whether or not they can meet those targets. I can see on this scenario that I've built out, am I going to meet those targets? And if not, I can then create this policy alternative 1 or create policy alternative 2 and start to see, am I able to then meet the forecasted growth that I'm expecting? So again, this is a collection of capabilities, again, that we're building to support this kind of capacity analysis and be able to rapidly build out scenarios and go back and forth between the thresholds for suitability and then distributions of very different neighborhood types around the community. Fast forward just a little bit here to the one last thing in here that I wanted to show. So in terms of a reporting component to this, so I built out the neighborhood. I get across the entire plan, the capacity numbers that I've been able to generate. In terms of reporting, we recognize that some people need to report at various reporting districts or reporting scales. This could be a census boundary, it could be a neighborhood boundary, or it could be something like a transportation analysis zone. And so we wanted to be able to summarize the capacity metrics that are being generated by ArcGIS Urban by these different reporting areas that one might need to report in. So I've created a report that calculates the housing population and jobs by a TAZ across my study area, TAZ being a transportation analysis zone. And we've actually created a separate web scene that I can use across the ArcGIS platform. And within each one of these TAZs, these are the polygons that we see here, we've summarized in this case, we're looking at the population within the redevelopment area. And we get to see the information summarized up at different levels. So that transparent box, this one out here, this represents the target that we were trying to achieve. The wider box here represents the existing conditions, and then the taller box is the future conditions. So in this example, we see here that we happen to be wildly overachieving the targets that we need. And then in other areas, we can see the relative positioning of the future conditions as compared to existing conditions as well as the targets. So again, trying to think through how can we report and then visualize this information in a different way than folks might be used to. So just looking at my time that I've got allocated to me, I want to show just kind of the end of one more of the examples of things that we're working on. In this case, we're looking at being able to think about how can we take the planning information that we're working on supporting in that long-range planning group and try and find the intersections with the long-range transportation planner. And the idea of my future community is going to be potentially very different than the community that I have. And how do I need to think about my transportation system supporting potentially a doubling of population within the area that might be living in very different places than where they live now, right? So again, connecting to that output of ArcGIS Urban, and then being able to connect to my GTFS data and bringing that into my browser. So now I see here all of the GTFS data related to my transit system. So the stops related to the bus routes, the route itself, and then creating a 5-minute walk shed around each one of those stations that we see here. So we're calling Esri's routing service and saying that we want walk sheds in 5 minutes. Maybe we want to extend that station or extend that line one stop, create the walk shed around that. And then I want to see the same level of capacity metrics being reported around each station. Let me fast forward just a bit. So for this one stop, we see that there's a population of 385 people there now. And in the future design, I'm seeing a growth up to 1,700 people. So, and then we wanted to start to think about what is the time component of when people are there, because that has an impact on when they might actually get on the bus and when they might not. So recognizing that retail or office or residential is going to have a different distribution of potential people within that neighborhood at different times of the day, which again are going to come in and out of those buildings and potentially get on a bus or get on a metro station. So this is very early work, stuff that we're starting to think through. I've had some really good conversations with people throughout the week as we start to kind of build out some of these ideas. And so I would encourage you, if this transportation component of urban planning is something that's of interest to you, please feel free to connect with us after. And at this point, I will hand things over to Lisa Stelli to talk to us about some more advanced workflows. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Can you hear me in the back? Is it working? Yeah? Okay, cool. Thank you. All right. As Brian already said, I'm going to show you a little bit how ArcGIS Urban, this web application, is going to integrate with City Engine, which is a desktop application. And I'm coming from the development team. We're located in Zurich, Switzerland, and we're developing both Urban and City Engine in there. And because I'm a developer, I want to quickly show you a little bit how we've developed ArcGIS Urban. So we're basing off ArcGIS Online as our database, and we're using the ArcGIS API for JavaScript as well as the REST API to call on the services and make edits and so on. But the more interesting part actually of the application is that we're using the same core technology that City Engine is using, the procedural modeling, and we've used that and brought it into the web. So this is one kind of precondition that makes it rather easy for us to integrate with City Engine. Urban has basically kind of originated from City Engine, from those principles. We wanted to bring that to the web. And as already said, City Engine and Urban is developed in the same team, and I collaborate a lot with my City Engine developer colleagues, and we're really all one family, one love. We really like the integration. We're benefiting from each other, from the requirements that we get from for both products, from users, and so on. And I quickly want to talk a little bit about what are the differences and how do the two play together. So as you've seen throughout also the presentation today, ArcGIS Urban is a very strong tool on the web to quickly design scenarios. So we can go through quick iterations on scenarios, and we can assess not just visually, but also with the capacity indicators, what are the impact of those scenarios. We cannot only do that like the urban planners, but we can also compare those scenarios then and let stakeholders look at those scenarios in our overview capability of the application. So a citizen or a stakeholder can look at it. So this is really the power of Urban, that we can bring everyone on a common platform to look at this information. So we've had a lot of people asking us actually, so if I have Urban, do I still need City Engine? And that's a really good question, because the capabilities of City Engine you can use now in the web. So you're asking why should I still use City Engine? But as you can see in the next slide, City Engine is really a tool that you use as a next step if you want to bring your scenarios into another level, basically. So you want to have more detailed designs. You want to sketch out this street. You want to put the furniture. You want to have your facade. And you can make those realistic renderings in City Engine. And that's not the only reason to use City Engine from Urban. Another reason is really to use this integration to go beyond City Engine, and I'll show you that later on. So, as said, ArcGIS Urban, those feature services, they live on ArcGIS Online, so City Engine can connect to them. Very similar to what Brian showed with the Urban Labs applications, it connects to the same services. So we can simply open a plan from Urban in City Engine, and once we've done with our models in City Engine, we can export it back up to Urban and showcase it for the public. But then from City Engine, we can do stuff beyond. So City Engine is a powerful tool for all sort of 3D formats to bring in, to also import OpenStreetMap data, for example, and then from there go into game engines, go into VR, and really make nice renderings, make nice experiences for citizens and stakeholders to look at. And I want to show you quickly our newest VR experience that we've just released, a new template for the Unreal Game Engine that is freely available in there. You can bring your models into VR goggles and show that to citizens or stakeholders. They can navigate around, they can walk around an environment, be fully immersed, and really feel how the city of the future is going to feel and look. So you can see we have realistic rendering, we can control the shadow at the time of the day, we have water shading and so on, so you can create a real environment for your stakeholders. So to look at this workflow, so really City Engine is kind of streamlining all of this. And this is an example workflow that I sketched out 2 weeks ago of something that, how you can do it. So you can, for example, go from Urban into City Engine and then into Unreal Engine and create a rendering, a nice video that you can also then bring back into Urban as embedded in a story map or in a hub page and showcase that together with your project. So it's really this Urban City Engine integration. It opens up a whole new world for you to create 3D content and show it to your citizens or stakeholders. And I made a little video. It's a time lapse, so it goes really fast. But I did this in about 1 hour and 30 minutes. So I have my scenario here in ArcGIS Urban that I've sketched out. This is the Boston example that has been shown at UC last year. And in Urban, I can visit with a nice web interface. I can tweak those buildings. I can change my input parameters, change the setback, and so on. And once I'm happy with my scenario, I can just import it into City Engine. It's the same plan. I just connect to Urban. I open Urban up in City Engine. And in City Engine, I get the same geometries, the parcels, the zoning, those buildings. And now I can go in and apply more detailed rules. I can put in higher detailed models. I can create parks, create vegetation. We also have a nice tree library within City Engine. I can create street polylines. I can apply a street rule and so on, so I can get this realistic environment within City Engine. And then once, again, if I'm happy with the City Engine result, which in this case just took me like half an hour. Of course, you can spend a lot more time on that. You can go really crazy on that, and we have City Engine users that do this, those really nice renderings. You can then export those models and bring them into a game engine such as Unreal. Can also be another one like Unity. So here I'm now exporting the models, and it just takes a couple minutes. And then you go into Unreal and you import the same models. Because we support that with the Datasmith format, you see that I still have the same textures. It's all the same that I just saw in City Engine, but in the game engine, I have realistic lighting. I can control the time of the day, the shadows, and then I can create videos, as you see here. And I'm not a game engine expert. You see me doing this for the first time in this video, actually. I've never done it before. So it just took me like half an hour of one of my colleagues sitting with me at the computer and showing me a little bit how it works. So you just define the camera points of where you want to have your fly through, and then you render out this video, and you just have it ready to be shared. So here I'm rendering it out, and in a second you'll see the final result. It's not perfect, it's my first try, so don't be too critical. But you see where I'm getting here. So it is just really a workflow that you don't have to have someone special in your organization. Everyone can learn that. So this is my little twist here. So, and then flying into this building, showcasing this nice architecture, and having like the sun and creating a certain atmosphere. So some of my colleagues are a little bit better at this. They do stuff like that. They take a little more time. So they can create really, really nice renderings, but they've also only started doing that about 2 years ago. So yeah, so they can make really nice videos and renderings and share those back to Urban. Yeah, and with that, I'm giving back to Brooks.
Okay. Brooks?
Yeah, sure.
When you have that level of detail, that your friends, you get that back into Urban?
Yeah, you can get this back into Urban as a video. So you can render out a video and then get it back into Urban as, for example, on a project page, or if you share it on YouTube, you get the link into the project.
It doesn't replace the 3D models that I have.
So the second thing you can do is when you've generated those buildings, you can publish them back as a scenario that lives in the plan. So you're actually taking those more detailed 3D models, turning them into a web scene, and then embedding that in a scenario. So you can, but Urban doesn't have the visual effects, the clouds, yeah, not that part.
Is the idea to keep Urban slightly more ugly than City Engine?
So I would say this.
What was the question?
The question was, is the intent to keep Urban slightly more ugly than City Engine?
So I would say there is a very much an intent to keep things more schematic. What one calls schematic, another person might call ugly, I recognize. But the intent is to keep it schematic. And we've heard that from the planners that at a point in the workflow that you want to keep the detail much lower. It's not the point to figure out the fenestration of the building, the cladding. That's not the point at the point in which Urban, in this scenario, makes the most sense. This is for size, bulk, and scale, and getting the capacity metrics, where City Engine and that higher level of detail comes further down in the design when you've got this more nailed down and you want to be able to show the city of the future that you want to get the emotional reaction from participants. So it's not as if we are unable to achieve something more pretty. We're purposely trying not to at this point in the workflow.
Yeah, and
It's not an accident.
And then that next leap from plan to project where you're proposing a specific building is where we'd rely on design software like Revit, and that's where the architect would offer that, and we would bring that back in as a building scene layer in a project to create a representation of actual change on the ground.
Sure.
So if you have the Revit model, is there a way to check that your schematic model is what is being designed? If I have a 5-building story, can you check that it's a 5-building story?
So you actually want to do, you want to compare the conceptual model, sorry, too close, the conceptual model to the Revit model. Yeah, there's, what we don't have right now yet is that good gateway from the ArcGIS platform into Revit where you can consume the service directly in Revit. That is something we're working on Autodesk with, and so the idea being that you could actually eventually bring GIS features like the envelope or the plausible form across.
Okay, that would be cool.
Yeah.
Very good questions, though. We also see the schematic as the first step towards getting to Revit. I mean, the ability to leverage the model as the render that you show the public is something that they're interested in doing, not necessarily even the schematic. So I just wanted to touch briefly on getting started. I have to call out the nice job that professional services here at Esri has done with packaging a launch kit. So if you did want to just get up and going with Urban, then it combines all of the necessary steps with data preparation and application deployment, and then we actually focus in on an example scenario. Typically, if you're interested in this, you already have a plan in mind that you'd want to actually see about using it for. So it would actually work with you a bit on the application of that set of tools for that particular plan. And then there's an opportunity for knowledge transfer. If there's a need for training, either remote or on-site options are available. And then also, Lisa and I will be doing a live training seminar next week on the 18th. So this is a quick URL straight to that live training seminar if you want to come and join. Also, I'll send this link out to everyone who put their business card in the envelope, just so you don't have to take photos. So the ability to go here and get a little bit more into the weeds would be my recommendation for those here. And if you don't have colleagues who came to the UC, feel free to share this link with them as well. And so please share your feedback in the application about the session, and we thank you very much for attending, and we'll also stick around for questions if there are additional questions as well. Thanks. Yeah, go ahead. The envelopes are actually pre-generated. They're actually stored as Z-enabled levels. So you can actually pull them out from the feature database as unique Z-enabled polygons that can then be extruded. It is possible to pull them out. And I guess that highlights a point. So you were asking if that particular workflow could be supported by Urban when it comes to looking at single parcels and their buildable envelopes. And what we also see as the value of Urban is this data model that could actually support that and many other use cases once this data model is stood up. Because it is based on what we know as the feature service in ArcGIS Online, so it can be extended to other use cases like that.
So it is possible in the future to create scripts within.
Yeah, so the question is it possible to create scripts inside ArcGIS Urban? So on the development path on the roadmap, one of the things I showed there was APIs and SDKs that we want to release in 2.0. So that would probably be a 2.0 component. Because they're services, you can do things like what Brian's showing where you can touch the same data, and if you can write something that changes it or modifies it or modifies the building form, you can do that however you want. But building it directly into Urban is still going to come as a 2.0 or 2.1 function.
Can I have a follow-up question? So with scripts, you mean CGA scripts or
Just like, it's built with Python. It's like
JavaScript?
JavaScript.
Yeah.
It's possible to create JavaScript scripts. Instead of having to click neighborhoods one by one, it's possible to create for loops with JavaScript where if a criteria is true, it's a Boolean true, iterate this instead of having to go in menus.
Yeah, so I mean, we don't know how the Urban API is going to look like. It will not have like full functionality, but professional services is probably also a good place to start talking to if you have ideas like that.
Any other questions? Yeah.
What you showed regarding these indicators are estimates for new development based on the zoning criteria and blah, blah, blah. Can you also calculate these indicators for existing neighborhoods? Well, I assume somebody would be interested, okay, how is the situation now? Maybe you have space for 100 family in this area, and how would it be if I implement this scenario?
Yeah, and to maybe highlight that, I'll open back up this plan area. With my fairly fast demo, because we did have, let's see, I'll rectify it north. If we look at the existing zoning obviously has a lower FAR in this case, so and it has restrictions on space use, so we can actually do the building type allocation under existing zoning conditions, and that would in this case be a warehouse result. Right, and then based on the rezoning of the districts themselves, you can allocate either those same warehouse models or different building types that are now allowed, for example.
But also the system of record that lies underneath it, the parcels themselves can carry information about those metrics, and then you're actually doing a comparison against real data if you have it.
As attributes.
Yes.
Yep.
So in this case, hardly any residential space. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.
And you can come find us downstairs as well.